So you've been notified that the recording has started. So please do bear that in mind. Feel free to turn on your cameras and mics, especially if you've had any questions, or you can use the chat function throughout, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So it's my job at Antinolin to really think about how we keep applicants and donors that you recruit in your marrow groups, how we can keep them engaged and committed to stem cell donation after they sign up, from when they're 16 to when they're 61. I think Neela's also dropped a sign-in sheet link in the chat, so please do fill that in as well. So in this session, in this webinar, we're going to be talking about what happens after you recruit someone online using your online link or at your marrow event, and some of the challenges that we face that we'd love your help to address. So we're going to be going over some tips for recruitment events so that we can process and retain donors with the view of that long-term commitment. We're also going to have a discussion about what we can do to ensure that people on the register are ready and prepared if they are called up as a potential match for a patient. After this session, we'll also share with you a video, which is a very cool glimpse of what the donor journey is from the eyes of a donor. So, for those of you that have never run an event before, do not worry, do not fear, maybe go to your donor recruitment training first, but we're going to start off at the point where you've had fantastic, successful event, you've signed up lots of people and you're putting some swabs in a red bag and returning them to your crate. So this year we've had 6 amazing events so far in September. And what we're going to talk about is what happens after you put those fabulous samples in the red bag. So with our digital applications, the applications data reaches our donor support team in an instant. This means that we can start to process applications straight away. If the applications don't have any medical details on them, then they will get automatically approved to join the register. But if the applications can't be automatically approved because they have extra information on their form, such as any medical conditions or other comments, we will then look at their application. So far of those 6 events that we've held, 30% of applications have been checked by our donor support team. So the team will get in touch with applicants with some follow-up questions just to make sure that everyone is eligible to join. We process thousands of applications a year to approve them. So then that big green crate full of swabs will be sent back to our labs via our fulfillment house called First Move, so that we can test the swabs and get someone's HLA to add them to the register. So on our application form, we have lots of questions about people's personal details, their health, and we also have an other comments box where we're encouraging people to put any other information about that they think that might be relevant to their application. But you would be amazed at the things that most people tell us in this other comments box. It's a classic classic case of too much information. So it would be good if you, Jean or Stella, want to post in the chat, and Rita, what you think some of the most common things that we get in our other comments box that we think are TMI. Or feel free to say as well. Yeah, Rita said blood transfusion, ingrowing toenail. Thanks, Jean. Yeah. Broken arm, fantastic. So some examples of comments that people put in this that could potentially delay them from being approved are things like, I'm as fit as a fiddle. I've broken my big toe when I was 2 years old. I have an ingrown toenail. I'm allergic to cats, or our worst enemy is nothing, I'm fit, NA. So one of the things that is good to think about is that, you know, for us in busy periods, is if someone's application needs manual approval, it could take up to a month to approve them. We try and process applications as quickly as we can, but it's fantastic when we are in busy periods, it can have slight delay. So people with complex medical conditions will always need manual approval, but it's often avoidable if the application is filled out well. So one of the things that we'd love you to consider when helping people to fill out their digital application is encouraging applicants to only capture relevant medical information. So of course, as volunteers, you're not expected to know all the answers about what is and isn't going to be a problem when it comes to stem cell donation. But you and applicants can use the medical guidelines. And if you're unsure, if your event is during sort of office hours, 9 till 5:30, you're more than welcome to use our donor support team and our phone line, which I've shared at the end, where applicants can speak to a member of the team directly to say, I've got a medical condition, do you think this will be a problem? They can explain from their perspective what it is and whether it's relevant for us to put in the other comments box. Do please think about using donor support as a helpline if you've got any particular tricky questions that come up at an event, or even to the applicants that come along, people that come along in the day can phone the donor support line to check if they're already on a register before you sign them up. So if anyone asks you whether they need to put in their application that they broke their big toe, please encourage them not to, and thanks in advance. So one of the other really important things is that we would love you to encourage people to put really sensible alternate contacts, someone they're likely to be in contact with for a long time, because that's the information that we will use if we can't get in contact with someone if they're a match for a donor. And the last tip is giving out a temporary donor card. So at all events, you will have this new resource, which is a temporary donor card. It's really important for people to go away, take something away from the event, especially so that they could be reminded that they might be contacted to give extra information about their application form. No one's on the register until we're able to approve them, and we might always give people a phone call to check their eligibility after your event. So now all applicants will receive an email straight away when they sign up at your event. And once an applicant gets approved, we will send them out a donor card in the post. The next step is testing their swab and adding their HLA type to the register. And then all new applicants will get what we call a first year on the register supporter journey, which is monthly emails about patients, donors, stories about Auntie Nolan, and they will get this email journey if they've opted in to receive marketing communications from us. So does anyone have any questions so far?
Sorry, how long does it take from a swab at an event to going onto the register? Like, what's the time frame? Like, for example, with cord, it's about 8 weeks from cord donation to the cord being in the bank.
Yep. So now with our digital data applications, it takes a lot faster, but we still have to test our HLA. It can vary in time depending on how quickly the swabs get back to us and how quickly we can send them off to America to get testing. But our overall sort of SLA is 91 days, but it often happens quicker than that, where someone's actually active and searchable on the register. I'll touch on it later, but one of our fastest donors signed up in January and was donating by July. And we're increasingly trying to cut out those turnaround times so that we can make people active as fast as possible and searchable for patients.
Thank you.
Stella's asked a question about what kind of allergies might be relevant for medical informations. So typically any allergies related to medication are obviously really important, but allergies relating to pets or food are not relevant to meaning that you've got stem cell donation. I will reiterate though, you know, if people put things in the other comments box, don't worry, we'll get in contact with people quickly. If in doubt, it's better to put it down than not. And, you know, it's our job to get in touch to check their eligibility. Fantastic. Jean's asked a question about how problematic is anemia in young women. So I don't actually have the stats to hand in terms of how many people have put that on their application form. And in some cases, you may not be able to donate, but I don't actually have the full answer to that. So we can get some information on that to you after the session.
Okay, thank you.
So if I move on now, I've got one other question that's come through about how many people from events that we can't end up approving, who don't end up joining the register. It's a really good question. So it's a really small number of people that we can't allow to join the register. Less than 5% of all applicants aren't eligible. So we obviously need to make sure that we have a quality register and also protect the health of the person that's donating to. So we can't let anyone join and donate if it could harm the person donating. At events, typically everyone does a fantastic job educating people about the register and also using the medical guidelines, and calling our donor support line are really good tools to use to ensure that as many people that are applying as possible are being able to be added to the register. So to dig a little deeper into the process and the donor journey, the next part of this session is thinking about some of the challenges that we face. And it's really helpful context to start with a team at Angie Nolan called the Search Team. So this team helps UK transplant centres to find matches and donors for their patients stem cell transplants. So the transplant centre will submit details of the patient, and we will search the UK aligned registries, followed by the international registries to try and find a match. Each request is unique, and matching donors and patients can be difficult. So there are over 17,000 different combinations of HLA alleles, which make up genes that dictate whether a patient and a donor are a match. This is why it can be so difficult to find donors for some patients. And I know we've been talking a lot recently about finding donors for patients from a minority ethnic background. We want to really increase our variety of people in the register and that variety of HLA types. So after talking to the search team, it's really clear that one of the best parts about their job is performing researches for a patient who have struggled to find a donor for a long time, and then seeing a 10 out of 10 HLA match, that the donor has now joined the register. And it brings home all the hard work that our colleagues do and you do at Marrow to recruit donors. So working towards that vision of providing stem cells for every patient who needs a transplant. So when someone appears in a search request, we need to get in touch with them. We've got a target of 14 days to get back to the transplant centre about whether the donor is able to go ahead with donation. So I'm showing a slide now with some headlines from newspapers, which are, may be familiar of some sad situations of donors dropping out or falling through with donation or pulling out last minute, which is obviously devastating for patients and their families. It's also hard for us as staff and volunteers when we hear news like this. We know that not every donor will be contactable, available, or still eligible when asked to donate. It's currently around 30% won't be available and 70% will be. So we're working hard to increase the availability of the potential donors, what we call trying to reduce our attrition rate. And of course, the story isn't quite what the media portrays. When we come to get in touch with a donor, when they're a potential match for a patient, things can be quite tricky. People can stay on the register until they're 61, and lots of things can change during their lifetime. So this is a slide that shows a pie chart of some data. And this year, especially, it's a really interesting time to look at the data due to the coronavirus pandemic. We saw this year and last year currently 38% attrition rate, where donors who were a match couldn't progress through to the next stage. This is higher than our average 30% that we've seen in recent years. And the pie chart breaks down looking at the different categories of why those donors aren't able to go ahead. So one large part is usually no trace, so the section in blue. And some of the reasons why we might not be able to get in contact with them is because maybe they haven't updated their details since they joined in a long time, especially where we've had an ac.uk email address or an old university postal address. Some other donors might not be able to fulfill their desire to donate when they first join the register because of reasons outside of their control, such as their own health or medical reasons, or their life has changed and now they are trying to have or have a baby, for example. This data shows since January this year, and you can see that medical reasons is quite a large percentage of why people can't go ahead with donation. As I said, this is partly due to COVID, where conditions such as asthma now means someone that is high risk. It now means that because they're high risk for COVID, therefore they weren't eligible to donate. And we're doing as much as we can to protect the donor. As vaccinations have been rolled out, that we should start to see some of that medical attrition fall. And then personal reasons are things, all for any legitimate reason under the sun. This could be anything from I'm caring for a sick relative, I've got my studies or work commitments, I'm scared of needles, or a mistrust of the healthcare system, or any other personal reasons under the sun. So I find it's really useful to split these categories into three main areas. Those that are unable to join, medical, abroad, they've emigrated, that even if they wanted to, they couldn't physically donate. Those that are unwilling, so they've told us that they don't want to take part, maybe some of those personal reasons I've just spoken about, and those that are not found. So where we couldn't get in contact with them because of their contact details. So does anyone have any initial reaction or questions about that? No, that's okay. So this is really where my team and my work comes in, trying to design interventions to lower this attrition rate. So if we think about those three categories again, so unable, obviously there's little we can do when people are unable to donate, but I strongly feel we shouldn't first find out about this when there's a patient involved, and we can be finding out these things much sooner, especially if someone's been on the register for 5 to 10 years. So we currently do an Update Your Details campaign. I'd love to launch a medical details, Update Your Details campaign at some point too. So we're screening people's medical conditions after they've joined the register. For those that are unwilling, one of our biggest tools is thinking about the education and resources and information that we give people at recruitment, so they really know what they're signing up to. And our temporary donor card, allowing people to go away with the information that they need to remind themselves that they're on the register until their donor card arrives. We've introduced sending communications. We're trying to improve that excellent service to people on the register. We're wanting to remind people what's involved in donation. So if they do come up, they're already we're in the front of their mind. And also checking commitment to be on the register over the phone and recent telephone campaigns. For the people that are not found, again, we have our Update Your Details campaign, where we've seen some great success of people updating their details and being reminded to check their contact details are still up to date. One of the things that we're thinking about doing is finding a way for people to be able to update their alternate contact information with us too. We know we've only just touched the surface with some of these initiatives and campaigns that we can run for people who've joined the Stem Cell Register. And some of the things that we've implemented so far have come from ideas from Marrow, such as we've now changed the fact that you can't use an ac.uk address on our digital application form, so that the contact details they're giving us are much less likely to expire. So we'd love to hear your ideas on what you can do as a Marrow group. So for those that you are watching it back recording, feel free to get in touch with me, Stephanie Drummond, through your Marrow group. I'm always love to hear ideas. So for the people on this call, you might have yourself be on the register or have heard feedback from the people that you speak to at events or friends and family. Is there anything that anyone wants to share now about ideas they might have with overcoming this availability?
I've always wondered actually. So, I mean, I know this from personal experience, but students, especially when they're still at uni and when they've only just left uni, they're moving around so much and so frequently, whether there's almost like a specific targeted age way of who to contact about updating their details, because young people might benefit from it more.
Definitely, that's a really good idea. Like almost like personalizing our Update Your Details campaign to say, if you're this age group and you were recruited at Marrow, let's send them the campaign twice a year instead of once or 3 times. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Okay. Have I just moved on to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
So one fantastic initiative I did want to share with you is a program where it's just new for Aunty Nolan, and we're trying to get backup donors. So donors in reserve, just in case the first choice donor isn't able to continue with stem cell donation. It's been really important, for example, where your first donor catches COVID or isn't able to go ahead with donation for any other reasons. So again, relatively new program so far. We've been able to provide backup donors. I think 7 of our backup donors have actually gone ahead with donation, which is fantastic, but also most of our first choice donors will go ahead with donation. So where we get an overseas request for an Aunty Nolan donor, it's been 5 days since the date of request, we will analyse the initial search results to identify, where possible, if there's any other suitable donor and available Aunty Nolan donor to offer the overseas registry or transplant centre, just in case the original donor can't go ahead. So we will contact these donors to let them know that they are a backup donor. We might say something like there are currently other donors who are possible matches for this patient, If they're not able to provide blood samples for further testing, we might ask you to provide a blood sample. So we ask the donor, this backup donor, to give us their new contact details so we can update them. We'll go through any medical checklists ahead of them being chosen, check their availability and answer any questions they have. In a few cases, we'll also potentially ask them to provide swab samples so we can get up-to-date information on them before asking them to provide blood samples. So in 2020, 50% of patients where we had 56% of patients where we had a search request had a backup donor who was identified, and 79% of those were agreed to proceed if the original donor wasn't able to go ahead. And all these people really engaged and really, pleased to be a part of this program. And for anyone we did request a sample, we had a turnaround time of 7 days. People were very keen to help out and be in reserve. And as I said, 7 of those people did end up donating after 7 of the first donors weren't able to go ahead. So really excited by this. By keeping donors in reserve, we'll hopefully be able to help more patients in a faster time. So two-pronged approach of trying to make sure everyone is committed and available to donation, but also in the instances where people can't go ahead, making sure we have someone in reserve ready and waiting to help that patient. So thank you for listening and taking part. Just to reiterate that due to Maro's ideas and your ideas and the changes we've been able to achieve so far, have already had great impact. Last year we had our first donation to date. Thanks to Maro, a donor joined the register in January and by July had donated their stem cells to a patient in need. It was 172 days from attending a Maro event to sitting in a London hospital. The patient to which this person donated had previously had a match with another donor who wasn't able to go ahead with donation in late 2019. So having that person join at Maro and be able to go ahead so quickly was absolutely fantastic. So hopefully some of the things that we've covered in this session helped you to understand the process beyond your events and some of the challenges we're facing, but overcoming with your help, with continuing to educate our donors at events and beyond. So now's a chance to ask any other final questions. And the donor support line is also on the screen if you would like to make a note of it. So Jean's got a question here of, can I check what's the usual time between registering, getting on the register and receiving their card? So it should be around the 2 weeks mark. So we will send a card as soon as that donor is approved. Some people are approved automatically and therefore will get their donor card in their post that same week. Other times we might need to check their application, and usually we can do that within 2 weeks' time. So we shouldn't really see any delay in sending donor cards. Where we've had huge patient appeals, for example, big spikes in the register, we'll usually let people know that there's a delay to processing their application and in contact with them so they know not to expect their donor card until they're actually approved on the register. But we send donor cards out, and we can always reissue donor cards as well. Some people might say, oh, I've lost my donor card, or I don't know where that is. We're more than happy to send new donor cards, and we're actually about to look at swapping to plastic-free alternative of a thick paper donor card, which is very eco and exciting. So sorry, Stella, I missed your question, has asked, can issues arrive once you've checked a blood sample that would stop someone from donating? Would it be not would it be just not being a good match originally, or there are other issues? Yeah, so that's a really good question. So once we've identified someone as a potential match, we need to ask them a blood sample to be able to confirm that they are the best possible match. And there's other things that we look at in that process, such as viruses in the blood. You might hear something around like cyclomegavirus status is something that people have discovered are really important for matching. So wherever possible, you want to have the same virus status in both the patient and the donor. So it could be new information like that, where they determine that actually there's a better alternate donor when they do have viral matches. The other thing that can happen after they've been identified as a match is that we ask people to do new medical questionnaires. So we might find out that now someone is now not eligible to go on with donation because of their own health. After we get the bloods back, we might not be able to proceed. Does that answer the question? I hope. Got a question about COVID. So I'm assuming once someone has recovered from COVID, they can donate. Yes, that's correct. And we actually do have some COVID guidelines that I'm sure that the Mara team can share about, the up-to-date guidelines from both registering a donor with COVID, which is obviously people should not be attending an event if they have COVID, but or going to a post box to send back their swabs, but actually swabbing whilst having COVID is not a problem. They should be self-isolating. So, but we can share information on both, like our COVID rules on recruitment and donation. I'm sure we can put that on some sort of Teams SharePoint file if people find that helpful. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for your questions. And as I say, really excited to try new things. If there's any ideas in the future, please do let me know. Thanks for your help.
You want to stop the recording here?
Thanks, Jean. Have a good rest of your days. Thanks, Rita. Thanks, Stella.
If you stop the recording here, I can upload that.
You got any final questions, Jean? I don't know if you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm trying to leave.